the bill sponsor lead on the introduction of the legislation, followed by the lead witness and other witnesses. Then we'll take questions. Then we'll move to the opposition and questions for those folks as well. I'm going to call people up and then pass it on to the vice chair. Senator, we're going to take Senator Klaus Meyer's bill first. You got to defer to the military today. We're going to start with Senate Bill 654, Veterans Affairs, Office of Communications and Public Affairs. We have a very Secretary Owens, are you going to?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Are you quick with testimony?
Yes.
No. Okay. The sponsor come up. Wes Moore. We're
Yes,
welcome, Mr. Moore. Please come up to the table, and also Patrick Guabeo. Okay. With that, there is, just so you know in advance, there's no one signed up in opposition. With that, Senator Klaus Meyer, please begin.
Lost my paper. Wait a minute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will keep this as brief as possible. Senate Bill 654, Veterans Affairs, Office of Communications and Public Affairs, Veterans Advocacy and Education Act. And I just want to begin by saying the sacrifices of veterans can sometimes be great. To show proper appreciation is our responsibility as lawmakers to create programs to help them when it's time to transition back to civilian life. Senate Bill 654, with the sponsor amendment I am offering, is a straightforward bill to alter the name of the Outreach and Advocacy Program to the Communications Outreach and Advocacy Program. This program helps those who have served their country with various resources, with an emphasis on encouraging our veterans to be successful in higher education and their professional development. Because veterans face different difficulties than others when pursuing life after service, more resources are dedicated to them to successfully transition. We seek to create a central location, which is very important for our veterans to learn more about various educational opportunities. In renaming the program as the Communications Outreach and Advocacy Program, we can achieve higher visibility for their services for veterans and their families. This bill will not substantially change the program, but rather clearly define duties and responsibilities of the program while making veterans fully aware of the resources that are available to them. For more information, I will refer to you with the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, George Owings, Secretary George Owings.
Thank you very much, Senator Klaus Meyer. It's good to be before you all. I want to thank you up front for what you do for our department. Some of you were here when we created this back in 1999, and we've been moving forward ever since. What this does is bring us into the next century, name-wise anyway. When I formed the Advocacy and Outreach Program back in 2004 was one of the first things I did upon taking this position. You'll remember that it was met with enthusiasm. Outreach and advocacy. We reach out to our veteran community and advocate on their behalf. We have now since moved far into the future from those early days, and communications is an important part of what we do. Very quickly, let me just say that when we started this program, we had 2,000 subscribers on the paper side of things. We now reach 180,000 of our veteran community by way of electronic newsletter. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it over to an esteemed veteran here who is going to speak to the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary, and good afternoon, everybody. Chair Pinsky and Vice Chair Kagan and members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, thank you for having me. I'll pull it closer. It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me. It's good being back. And first, I just wanted to say I'm excited to testify on behalf of Senate Bill 654. And I also just want to say a special thank you to Senator Klaus for your leadership on this, because this is about more than even just a naming change. This is about a way we talk about, define, and frame what it means to support our veterans. And so thank you for the leadership on it. And I've submitted written testimony, but I also wanted to come here and just to very personally talk about how important it is that we provide Maryland's veterans and their families with the educational and also the training resources that are going to be necessary to compete in the job market, and how important it is to have our veterans and their family members able to compete in the job market. As a veteran and as a former Army captain who led soldiers in combat in Afghanistan, I have seen my fellow veterans struggle when they left the service and then when they came home. I became a veterans advocate when I first came back, not because I had to, but frankly because I had to. Because we saw situations where we had people who I served with who, while we were overseas, we got what we needed when we asked for it. And I would have soldiers who would come back home, and it would be 9 months before they could see a doctor. It would be months before they could find themselves with sustainable employment options. And so for the past 15 years since I redeployed, working on veterans issues has been a personal mission of mine. And with the right training, we know and we realize that our veterans can easily make the transition to succeed, and more importantly, they can also help to drive our economy, which right now has about 198,000 job openings that we know that our veterans could be uniquely capable of being able to fulfill and serve. And so many of our veterans are small business owners, and they are employers themselves. The state of Maryland alone has about 50,000 veteran-owned small businesses, which generate over $20 million in sales each year and employ thousands of people, many of whom are veterans themselves. And so our veterans have incredible potential to continue to serve and lead in communities, and I hope to think, and I'd like to think that I am evidence of that. And yet the data from the Department of Veterans Affairs shows that less than half of all eligible veterans use any form of benefit at the federal level. Less than half. And by helping our veterans and their families receive the educational and the training resources that they need to compete in the private sector, in the service sector, in the public sector, we're not only fulfilling a moral obligation, but we're helping to prepare a stronger and a well-prepared workforce. And I'll close just simply with a principle that for many of us who served, one of the first things that we learned in our basic was a principle that they asked us to live by. And that principle was simple, and it was just leave nobody behind. And this is something that I know that all Maryland veterans hold as solemn. Passing this bill will be one step in ensuring that we don't leave anybody behind, and the path to do so can be clear and laid out. I thank you for the time, and I look forward to any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Senator Klaus Meyer, Secretary Owings, and, sorry, my choice for governor, Wes Moore. But this is not a campaign rally. Are there questions from colleagues? Senator Patterson, do you have a question?
Well, I'm going to be up in a few minutes with my very own bill, but just like to extend a special appreciation to those of you who decided to take time out of your business schedule to come here and acknowledge the wonderful thing and all the wonderful things, and of course the things that needs to be done on behalf of our veterans. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Senator Washington, followed by Senator Carosa.
Again, thank you, Senator, for this bill, and I want to recognize my constituent, Wes Moore. I think I was his choice as senator. I hope I was one of them.
You were, Madam Senator, you were.
But I wanted to ask you, the Director Moore, about where you fit in the Department of Veterans Affairs. So there's the Department of Veterans Affairs, and will this be, it looks like you're turning it into an office? Well, whoever can answer the question.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, you can clarify.
No, I was just being nice to him because he's my constituent. We're both on the ballot.
No, I thought she said more. Owings is Owings.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry,
Sorry, sir.
Senator, yes. No, it's not a separate department maneuver or anything else. It's an internal redressing, like Mr. Moore said, we are dressing up that program
Yeah.
and moving it into this century because it's what we do now.
Yeah.
It's just not named that way.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, yeah. I guess I was, because you're moving it from a program to an office, which I'm
No, we're not. The amendment reduces it back to a program.
Oh, well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, huh? Yeah. Everything's going to be together, exactly right.
Oh, okay. So there can't be an office within Veterans Affairs that's about community?
The office, cabinet level, is the Office of Veterans Affairs.
And then-
Below that, I operate 5 separate programs.
Right.
We run the Veterans Home, we operate
Yes,
5
yeah.
cemeteries.
Yeah.
We have the outreach, advocacy, and hopefully communications side of things. We
Yeah.
have a one-person operation for the trust fund, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then we have services and benefits, which is where all veterans come to us or to the Purple Heart, VA, VFW, or any other service organization for entry into the VA system for benefits.
Okay, yeah, because I see you have, I just want to clarify, I see you have a significant budget. I mean, you have 63 million for the Veterans Home, and you have a lot, so when I saw, oh, you're going to be an office, I thought of it as being a separate office within Veterans Affairs.
No, ma'am, it's
So, okay, great.
it's a rebranding
Got it.
of the department itself.
Right, so the
And
amendment
And incorporated
simplifies
in
the-
that is the animal program and several other equestrian and things of
Well,
that
I
nature.
support it, so thank you so
Wonderful.
much. Thanks for
Thank you very
clarifying.
much.
Thank you, Senator Washington. Senator Carosa?
Madam Vice Chair, and I haven't stopped smiling since I walked in. Thank you for this bill, and I want to point out Secretary Owings' leadership. We served together in Governor Ehrlich's administration when you were the Veterans Secretary then, and you put a lot of this in place. So this bill today coming forward to keep the good work moving forward is needed. But it also is a reminder of all the services you're providing to our constituents. My question, and it is for the Secretary, you'll recall back in 2015, my first bill as a delegate was you helped me with a veterans small business procurement bill.
Yes.
And I just heard Mr. Moore mention that, we should talk about how you have our leaders, our military, our leaders, when they're serving, when they come back home, we should be supporting their transition so they can be leaders at home. My question for you, because small business and the transition was mentioned, what do you think that next step, when we were working together before, we were trying to make sure those opportunities for veterans, the veteran-owned businesses could bid on procurement, but I think it goes beyond what we need to be doing. So I wanted to ask you, what else can we be doing in that area?
You might know that Governor Hogan gave me a long-needed pen recently, and what it is a women veteran inclusion individual dedicated specifically for the 54,000 women who want to become entrepreneurs. I just today taped a Morgan State appreciation video, which will be used very shortly at an exposition they're going to have on campus. And it addresses that very thing about women entrepreneurs. So Mr. Moore is right. This whole idea of moving forward in today's climate, a lot of changes have taken place, and it was time, and I want to thank the governor publicly for what he did by giving us this pin. We brought on board a retired, I think she's an E8 individual. Her family is militarily involved. Her husband's retired. She has a daughter in the military, and I actually stole her from the Department of Commerce.
And I think, I'm so glad you shared that information with us. And I know that you, and I'm assuming the new appointee will be participating in our March 23rd Women's Veterans event.
She's on board. She will
Okay.
be presenting, but thank
Okay.
you for pointing that
Wonderful.
out as well.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, and for everyone in the room, one of the things we try to do in this committee is avoid acronyms so that everyone in the room and everyone watching at home. So when the governor gave you a pin, Mr. Secretary, it was not to put on your lapel. It was actually a
Thank you,
human being.
Vice Chair. No, it wasn't this kind of pin. It was a personal identification number is what
Thank
it is.
you. Thank
That's how
you.
we're identified in state government, by numbers.
That is a person who's going to be doing good work. We have a question from Senator Ellis, and then we'll start to wrap this up.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Senator Klaus Meyer, thank you for this bill. Ever since I've been here, this fourth session, you've been a champion for veterans, so thank you for being there for us. And it's just great to see these two veterans sitting here. I have a question for each. It'll be short. Who should go first? Secretary Owens.
I defer to the
Yes,
Secretary.
sir.
So good to see you. I apologize walking a little late. Did you have a little quip or a joke for us? You always have such great quips.
Well, I usually do, but you caught me off guard this time.
I love the one about calling you anytime.
Oh, that joke.
Yeah.
That wasn't a joke, Senator. That was a true story.
That's
And
why I
some
love
in
it.
this room remember that I always prided myself on being able to be reached 24 or 23
my.
and a half hours a day. Senator Senator Patterson knows this to be true. So I had somebody call me one morning at 3:30.
Wow.
And I answered it. I said, hello? He said, yes, Owens. I said, yes, sir. Can I help you? He said, I just want to see if you were telling the truth when you said, we can call you anytime you want. So I waited 45 minutes, called him back.
That's hilarious.
He said, well, what do you want? I said, I just want to see if there's anything else I could help you with. Herbie, you remember that story.
Yeah, and we needed that because we had almost a 5-hour session on the floor today. So thank you, Secretary
Five and
Owens.
a half.
Thank you for your service,
Five and a
Senator.
half.
5.5 hours,
Five and a
okay?
half.
Yeah, fun. And so, on a more serious note, this is Women's History Month, Mr. Secretary, and, you know, I have a lot of military members in my district,
Right.
and this one lady, particular leader in the county, asked me, what is the state doing about military sexual trauma for so many women, veterans who suffered military sexual trauma? What is the department doing to step up activities, programs, or outreach in that area?
MST, of course, is now in the forefront as the women veteran community comes out of, for lack of a better word, the shadows. They are a full force. You've already heard me say there are fully 54,000 women veterans, women who served in uniform in this state. And heretofore, they've pretty much gone unrecognized. And that's the reason that Rosalind Jones' position was so critical to fill at this juncture. It's been needed for some time, and again, the governor gave us that pin finally. We didn't have to jump through a whole lot of hoops to get it. So, the PTS situation, the MST situation, everything else, we're getting ready to hold a women's caucus, and it's going to be chock full of individuals from the national level as well as the local level.
Could I slow you down a bit? So
Yeah.
PTS is PTSD,
I'm sorry,
post-traumatic stress.
Post-traumatic stress.
And
We dropped it.
MS is
MST is Maryland, is military sexual trauma.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
sorry about that. We dropped the D off of PTSD.
Correct, yeah.
Because a child that sees the house burned down with his parents in it is going to suffer post-traumatic stress, obviously. But anyway, it's something that we're really looking forward to being a participant in this upcoming women's, and of course Edith Patterson is very involved in this, as you well know, being one of your delegates. She's involved in this heavily, and we're looking forward to bringing this to the forefront.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir.
And,
Thank you, Senator.
And Mr. Moore, from one captain to another,
Well.
good to see you
to
again,
see you.
sir. And what's your idea with working, supporting our women's veterans, especially going through military sexual trauma? Have you done anything in that space? Could you elaborate?
We have. Thank you very much, and thanks for your continued service. Actually, I was formerly a board member of an organization called Iraq Afghanistan Veterans of America, and one of the issues that we worked on, in fact, the name of it was She Bore the Battle. And it was a real core focus on being able to support not just the survivors of MST, military sexual trauma, but it was also about making sure that the transition points for women veterans as a whole were in place. Part of the challenge that we had for so many female veterans as they were coming back home was the supports that we had in place, the mechanisms that we have in place, were oftentimes chronically underfunded because when these elements were built, they were not built with female veterans in mind. And so part of our goal and part of our focus with the entire initiative was to both make sure that we had elements that were fully funded. The second thing was, and one of the reasons why I'm excited about, and I think it's important and overdue that we do have the pin for this role, is it does come back to this idea of the people who are closest to the challenge are also the ones who are closest to the solutions. And so it's about making sure that we have women, that we have not just survivors of MST, but that we're making sure that the decision-making premises are actually occupied by a representative body, so we don't have those oversights.
Yeah, I'd like to take a little step back, just a little step back. And I'm speaking from a position of knowledge, but people listening here might not know, what are the issues of military sexual trauma? I don't know, Secretary Owens, you can say what a lot of our female service members go through. What are we talking about when we say military sexual trauma?
That
Let's
would be,
define it.
that would be while they were in uniform and inappropriate sexual behavior was encountered by the women veteran. It went unreported so often and so long because of fear, nothing more. One, fear of what? Fear that they're going to be counter-accused, kicked out of the service, berated, looked down on, shunned by other people they're serving with. So it was a fear factor.
Or not believed.
Or not
Or
believed.
not believed, thank you, Vice
not
Chair.
believed.
Or not believed at all, Senator. I mean, it is a real growing problem. It's just now coming to the forefront. It hadn't been that many years when MST, military sexual trauma, wasn't even in the vocabulary, wasn't discussed. It was swept under the rug. And now it's raised its ugly head. A little late, but at least it's out there now.
And hopefully we can chop the head off.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
can.
I'm sorry.
So, Senator Ellis, thank you for being an ally, not just for women's veterans, but for women. You're really wonderful at that, so I really just want to give you a public shout out for that.
And
You're wonderful.
I
so-
would just like to end by saying here's to all the veterans that are here in Annapolis and all throughout Maryland and the whole world.
Amen, amen.
And they're over there fighting for us now, and we have to always remember that. That's first thing. And I just want to say, for the benefit of Maryland veterans, we have the best Secretary of Veterans Affairs everywhere, because this man has moved the Department of Veterans Affairs from here to here, and he will continue doing that.
Yep,
So
Secretary Owings has been in my district, and we have, we've cooperated
Great
on a lot of
pictures,
stuff.
but I'm not
So
gonna share.
before we wrap up, I feel like I'd missed the opportunity if I didn't ask Wes Moore to just add, this is a great start. How would you add on to this if you were to ever have the capacity to add on to something like this? Just fantasizing what if,
No, thank you. If I were to have the opportunity to be here next January 18, I think there's a few different things that we also want to make sure that we also layer in and level in. One, I think we have got to squarely tackle the issue of poverty amongst the veterans community, where we have upwards of 17,000 veterans in the state of Maryland alone who are still living in poverty. And when we have people who have served our state and served our nation and are still dealing with the challenges of everything from housing insecurity and food insecurity and pathways to higher education, there are ways and mechanisms that we can do that can specifically focus on that I think we need to be able to focus on. And that is something we can accomplish in our time, to have a situation where we have no veteran who comes home and lives in poverty, and we need to. The second thing I think becomes incredibly important is how we're thinking about supports for family members. I tell you, Senator, I always thought that it was the veterans who had it toughest until I deployed. It's not. It's the families. Because when we're deployed, you know, we have good days and we have bad days, but we have each other. Oftentimes, families are left very much on their own. And the way we think about the supports for the family members also exists in very much the same way, where we have family members who feel like they are on their own. And so how we're continuing to push for supports, everything from GI Bill expansion and making sure that that actually extends off to family members, how we're thinking about additional supports, not just during deployment, but during the redeployment process, all become very important. I was very proud, you know, earlier this year, I submitted, I'm going to make sure I get the bill number right, but submitted testimony for HB 1251. And that basically just ensured that the spouses and the dependents of veterans who were laid to rest, that it wasn't the family members who had to endure those costs, right? These are basic things that we can do to better be able to strengthen that relationship and frankly strengthen the promise that we made to veterans and their families when we deploy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moore. We have a lot more hearings and then a voting session, so we are going to wrap up, excuse me? We're going to complete the hearing on Senate Bill 654, but I want to thank Senator Klaus Meyer for the bill, Secretary Owings, and Wes Moore for your service and your presence here today. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you to the committee.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Travel safely. Okay, so colleagues, we're going to change up the order a little bit. Patrick, you bow? Joseph, is that? Okay, we're going to skip that. Okay.
He's
All right.
not here, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have wonderful Tuskegee Airmen, and we want to hear from them. We also have Senator Reedy, who has a funeral. We have Senator Edwards, who's been waiting for a long time. So we are just going to do this as quickly as possible. We're going to go with Senator Edwards because he is the only witness. So if we can have Senator Edwards go really fast. My friend and longtime legislative leader from Western Maryland. Senator Edwards has Senate Bill 978.
Thank you,
Hold on one second.
Madam Chair.
Let me just announce it. It's not in the folder, it's not in the pile. Give me 1 second. Do you have it? All right, thank you. I apologize, I don't have the folder. Senator Edwards, Garrett County Memorial Hospital lease authorization and alterations to Board of Governors. Sounds very controversial.
I'm sure it is, but
Senator Edwards,
just
welcome
want to
back.
say thank you. Being a veteran, I support the veterans' causes here. Senate Bill 978 is an emergency bill. I hope you keep that in mind. It's very important to our county. You should have a letter from the county attorney really going through this. I'm going to quickly hit the high points because it said it'll only take about 2 minutes, so we'll do that.
Perfect.
This changes the structure of the local board, what they can do, what they can't do, the county commissioners, what they can do and can't do. The county actually owns it. For the last several years, they've had a working agreement with the University of West Virginia Hospital Complex. And the correct term, I think, of them now is the West Virginia United Health Systems Incorporated. Garrett Regional Medical Center for the last several years has been rated in the top 20, in the country of rural hospitals. We're hoping they get to be rated #1 at some point. This will allow them to do a lease agreement, which will allow the system to put money into the hospital to upgrade facilities, send specialists there, which they're doing now, which they've been doing for the last couple of years. And we've seen tremendous change in things that are provided, health care that's provided. And that should only increase with this. But we need this bill because it's in the law. So to change the law, we have to have a bill put in. So I would hope you would support this bill and get it through so we can move forward with providing great health care for the citizens of Garrett County, plus all the visitors that come out there year-round now who need health care services.
Thank you so much, Senator Edwards, and you have spent decades as a tremendous advocate for your constituents in Garrett and Allegheny County, so thank you for that. Do colleagues, are there questions or comments? Senator Riley?
You've been very bold. You've been very bold saying he's going to be quick. He's the slowest talking senator in the body.
There is that.
Do we have a letter from the delegation?
You should, yes.
Ooh.
You should have a letter from the one-member delegation, yeah. If you don't, let me know and I'll get you one. But
There
I
you
still,
go.
even though I'm probably the slowest speaker here, I still think I stayed under 2 minutes.
There you go. All right, I see no other questions or remarks. Senator Edwards, always a pleasure to have you here in EHE. That completes the hearing for Senate Bill 978.
Thank you very kindly.
Take care. Senator Patterson, we want to hear from the Tuskegee Airmen. Then we'll have Senator Reedy, then we'll have Senator Rosapap, if we can manage all that. So gentlemen, welcome. Senate Bill 5, Senator Patterson, General Provisions, Commemorative Days, Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. And gentlemen, I know that you've been waiting a long time. This has been a long day for all of us, and we are grateful for your patience and your presence. If Jerry Burton, Secretary Owens,
Will.
Edward Harbison, Franklin Killebrew want to be in the front or in the first row, and Joseph Pruden, and again, I guess Patrick Gabeo may not be here.
And then we'll move 3 back
So,
and 3 up.
yeah, so Senator Patterson, bring up the ones that you would like to have up there. And with that, you may begin. Thank you, Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and colleague. It's been a long day. I'll tell you, I'm exhausted. But I am delighted to be here to introduce this very historical history-making group to you again for the second time. As you may know, we presented this bill last year. Of course, we got it through the Senate, but we didn't get it through the House. So we're back in hopes that we can get it back across the street in an effort that the House can see fit to pass this bill. I don't need to go into a whole lot of particulars about the bill, but let me just tell you, the bill requires the governor to annually proclaim the fourth Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. This proclamation must urge educational and cultural organizations to observe Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day through appropriations and informational programs and activities. At present, there are some 9 other states that has already enacted this legislation: Arizona, Colorado, District of Columbia, Florida, Minnesota, Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Alabama. And it is being debated as we talk in New York. This bill comes, Senate Bill 5. There's not a major financial impact to the state. It's just doing what I think is long overdue. It's recognizing a group of pioneers who have who have gone beyond the call of duty to play a role in keeping us all healthy and safe. And I am personally excited and delighted. I might just tell you, one member of this group is a member of my church, so when I'm in church, I see him every Sunday. Reluctantly, we have not been able to do that the last year and a half, but I do hope that this is the year that we can get this bill through the House. The bill is going to be here on Thursday, the 15th, over on the House side, and I should tell you that the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus has listed this legislation as a top priority. The NAACP at the local and state level has also endorsed this legislation. And of course, we got the man here with us today, Mr. Secretary of the Army, who is going to speak. Not only is he here today, but he was here last year and the year before that. So, Mr. Secretary, we certainly want to personally thank you for your commitment, your willingness to come time after time and show your respect and appreciation for these gentlemen who have paved the way for many of us. I know not you, you're such a young man.
Thank you, Senator Patterson.
But colleagues, with that, I do hope you would vote favorable upon this piece of legislation. Last time, we had a 47-0 count on the Senate floor.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Thank you for bringing the bill back. protocol, so Jerry Burton is supposed to be the lead witness, but I think protocol would indicate that the cabinet secretary should speak first briefly, and then we'll go to Mr. Burton if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I won't belabor this. It's not a bill that is unfamiliar to you all, but I want to hone in on why this is in so many ways such a tragedy that the House just cannot see fit to let it out. You know, I may or may not be before you next year, depends on what happens and who's selected, but I'm going to pull all stops out when I testify in the House next time, which is very shortly. And the reason is this: Charles Edward McGee doesn't really mean a lot to people today. And if you weren't born during the World War II period, you're not even familiar with the Tuskegee Airmen. But they fought 2 wars simultaneously. They were fighter pilots of renown to this day. And they also fought racism at the highest possible level. When they were formed, they were separated, sent to a different airfield to train, and then go into combat. And it wasn't until 2 years later that they were even really brought about to who they are today. They fought with valor, and they fought with determination. Were some lost? Absolutely. But let me go back to Charles Edward McGee. General McGee was given his rank by former President Trump. Before that, he received the Congressional Gold Medal, as did all members of the Tuskegee Airmen from a former president. I believe it was President Bush that issued that. So McGee was more or less a leader. He has been here to testify each time we've had the bill until this year. He passed away this year, and he's not here. But more importantly, his date of birth was December 7, 1941.
Oh, my God.
Charles Edward McGee, you can look him up. That was his date of birth. So if for no other reason, in memory of Brigadier General Charles Edward McGee, this bill should pass. You all are to be credited with sending it out every single year that you get it. And I want to personally thank you on behalf of those that can no longer thank themselves. You'll hear testimony in a minute, and I want to thank Commissioner Killebrew here, who right here is going to be testifying shortly. Because he's the one that has spearheaded this whole thing through the legislative process and through the department. But it's an honor to be before you one more time, and I know you're going to do what you've always done, and I just hope that the House can hear this and will acquiesce this time around. What I'm going to ask you to do is call your 3 delegates, each one of you, and ask them to get behind this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Burton, thank you for your extended patience. You know, anyone who's got to wait for Secretary Owings may be waiting a while, so, but he's worth it. He's the best. Mr. Burton, thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you. We're just honored to have you all here on this bill, and we appreciate Senator Patterson. Please begin your testimony. As the lead witness, you can have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So tell us a story. Educate those who are watching from home. You guys, not everyone knows about the Tuskegee Airmen. So let's not assume just because we had it last year that anybody knows or remembers. So let's tell the story, please.
I appreciate that guidance, because I was going to skip over a lot of information.
Don't do that.
Because,
Yeah.
but
Mr.
I will.
McGee is one part of the story, but let's tell the broader story too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, please.
Thank you. Honorable Chair and Senate, please accept our gratitude for allowing us to come back once again. We will come back anytime you need us to come back. That's who we are, and that's how much we believe in the process of getting things through. I am Jerry Burton. I am the National President of Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. The first time I came here, I was the local chapter president. So again, that's how much I believe in what we are trying to accomplish here today. We are here, of course, in favor of Senate Bill 0005, Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. We, the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated members, family, and friends, we come humbly and excited to request passage of the Senate Bill 5. Why are we here? In 1973, the East Coast chapter was formed as a nonprofit organization. We are still chartered as a nonprofit organization. We were formed by original Tuskegee Airmen and community citizens that believed in the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen and young people in the community advancing to higher education pursuits, not just pilots. Tuskegee Airmen were not just pilots. There were more than 15,000 original Tuskegee Airmen, women and men, white and black. There were also a couple of Haitians that also joined the ranks of being pilots. They were cooks. They were dog handlers. They were security people. They did all those things it took to man a military base. Why are we here in Maryland? We've already got the legislation through a few states. They were mentioned already. Why Maryland? Many Tuskegee Airmen settled in Maryland. They lived here in Maryland. They were so recognized that 2 already in Prince George's County have schools named after them. Dr. Henry A. Wise, Charles Herbert Flowers. Those are named after Tuskegee Airmen, and they were so important that they were named before they died. That's how special they were in the community. There were other leaders in the communities. Leroy Boots Battle, Douglas Junior and Senior High School Band, has a wing named after him. Lemuel E. Louis. We also have, of course, I can't make my presentation without mentioning Brigadier General Charles McGee. Charles McGee, over the last 2 years, was our rock star. He was everywhere. He made it easy for us to talk about Tuskegee Airmen. Now, it's a little difficult. We have to work the way we were supposed to work, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Why March? Why did we select the 4th Thursday in March? There's a lot of reasons. To highlight a few. The 22nd of March, 1941, the 99th Pursuit Squadron was activated at Chanute Field, Illinois. 7th of March, the first class of 5 African-American pilots completed training and received their wings. 24th of March, the 332nd Fighter Group took part in the longest World War II raid of the 15th Air Force. There was also an attempt by 101 black officers to go into an officers' club. They were arrested. They were attempted to be court-martialed, but the final disposition, 98 of those officers were exonerated. 50 years later, the final officers were exonerated, and all records were expunged. The true history and incredible accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen are still being recorded 81 years after the first class of black maintenance officers graduated from Chanute Field in Rantoul, Illinois. Tuskegee Airmen should be commemorated and celebrated in the state of Maryland long after the last Tuskegee Airman has passed away and joined the Lonely Eagles. The annual Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day would provide a greater opportunity for all concerned, that be organizations and community partners, to promote the activities to benefit youth in the state of Maryland. State of Maryland should recognize and appreciate the importance of keeping the Tuskegee Airmen legacy alive and provide continued support to statewide events highlighting their exploits of World War II. The importance of this proposal in the state of Maryland
Mr. Burton,
will join.
if you could wrap up, please.
Thank you. I want to close with the remarks of, we do appreciate you allowing us to come here today.
Well, we appreciate your service and your leadership and your being with us today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harbison, is that you? Mr. Killebrew, sorry, Franklin Killebrew. Okay. Well, I think you've been around a few years here, working on these issues, so welcome. So subsequent witnesses have 2 minutes, if I can ask you to watch the clock, but we really do want to hear from you. So welcome, Mr. Killebrew.
Okay.
You may begin.
All right. What I'd like to do first is to thank the Maryland Senate for supporting the Tuskegee Airmen for the last 3 years,
because you've had our back, and we appreciate that, and we applaud you for that. I'm Chief Master Sergeant retired, U.S. Air Force, and retired aerospace science instructor from Oxon Hill High School. I had the opportunity of teaching many students in the 25 years I was at Oxon Hill. Now, I can give you a lot of history, and I'd like to give you a few notes that I put on this paper. In March 19, 1941, the United States War Department established the 99th Pursuit Squadron, along with 3 other fighter squadrons, and those 4 organizations, those 4 fighter squadrons became the 332nd Fighter Group. The 350 pilots went to war in World War II. Just a couple of events there. They flew over 15,000 combat missions supporting the bombers to targets, and also on the longest bomb run that you just heard from Mr. Burton. We had 350 pilots go to war. We lost 84 pilots in that campaign. They flew over 15,000 hours. They shot down 112 enemy aircraft in the air, and then 150 aircraft on the ground. They also destroyed 950 rail cars, trucks, and other motor vehicles. They received 150 flying crosses, 744 air medals, 8 Purple Hearts, and 14 Bronze Stars. After the war, the Tuskegee Airmen competed in the first, what they call Top Gun competition, and they placed first in that competition. They were not recognized for it at that time period, and it took 73 years this year, 2020, to be recognized for that competition.
Thank you, Mr. Killebrew. Thank you for those stories. Mr. Harbison, East Coast Chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, Inc. You came and joined us from Stafford, Virginia.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for making the drive. Welcome to Annapolis.
Thank you, ma'am. I thank you for allowing me to be here, Madam Co-Chair. Distinguished members, my name is Edward Harbison. I served honorably in the United States Air Force, retiring in December of 2000 after 23 years of honor service. In my 12th year of being in the service, and I remember so distinctively, I learned of the Air Force, or the Army Air Corps' first aerial gunnery competition that Chief Killebrew spoke of. And it was won by a unit of all-black members of the Tuskegee Experience that we now know as Tuskegee Airmen. These men and women from the Experience, or the Tuskegee Airmen, were all black, white. They were part of our greatest generation, and they sacrificed and persevered. They opened doors so others like myself could serve this great nation equally. Not only did they perform their duties and tasks, they achieved objectives, and situations were created intentionally so they would fail. These great Americans need to be recognized for their unsung effects on the development of the United States of America. Let's not diminish their accomplishments, like the first place trophy won by these all-black Americans in 1949, hidden and hoped to be forgotten. Maryland needs to make the 4th Thursday of March Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. After fighting oppression abroad, they returned home to fight racism, bigotry, and prejudice practices inside our home borders, becoming doctors, with lawyers, teachers, pharmacists, politicians, and great model citizens. If not now, when? If not you, who? You have the power to pass this legislation. Now's the time. You are the right people. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Harbison. We appreciate you. And someone else we really appreciate is Joseph Pruden, who is here all the time and is such an elegant and thoughtful presence on veterans issues. Mr. Pruden, welcome back. It's nice to see you in person after 2 years.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your comments.
and I will be brief.
Thank you for that, too.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. During World War II, at least 20 young African-American men left their homes in Maryland and became members of what is now known as the Tuskegee Airmen, 20. They distinguished themselves in every possible way while fighting for America, for themselves, their children, their culture, as well as every American citizen, in the hope that their country would accept Americans of all colors as first-class citizens. We have now lost two of Maryland's most notable Tuskegee Airmen, Brigadier General Charles McGree. You've heard about him several times today. We've talked about Dr. Wise, and also Dr. Charles Herbert Flowers, who became the first African American with military training to be a primary flight instructor of the Tuskegee Airmen. Their passings bring to mind the extraordinary service and sacrifice these American heroes, sons of Maryland, from World War II's greatest generation. Our American Legion Department of Maryland family spans more than 100,000 households who live, pay taxes, and vote in Maryland. They reside in all 23 counties and Baltimore City. The American Legion Department of Maryland and its membership respectfully and strongly request favorable report of Senate Bill 5 establishing Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. We especially want to thank Senators Patterson, Ellis, and Carosa for putting this bill forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pruden. Are there questions for Senator Patterson or any of the other witnesses? Okay, if we can be a little brief, but Senator Riley, and I think followed by Senator Ellis.
I'm always short and sweet, you know that. So please know that we have your back. We will vote it again. But more importantly, we have a delegate over here, retired Army Captain Iron Mike Rogers, and I'm sure he is here to support you on the other side of the street. Thank you, Madam Chair.
There you go. Thank you, Senator Riley. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So retired colonel over there. So, yeah, there's a big difference, you know.
I kept saying, there's a colonel there.
Yeah. So thank you, Senator Patterson, for your leadership with this issue and your determination to get it done. I really appreciate you and the strength and support you have for our veterans. Really quick question. I think a previous witness talked about the two high schools in Prince George's County named after our distinguished Tuskegee Airmen. I would love to get a list to see where all these Tuskegee Airmen came from in Maryland. And I think we should replicate that throughout the state. So I don't know who I could give that assignment to. If you could give an answer.
I think Mr. Burton is going to help us here.
Mr. Burton, okay.
Mr. Pruden, can we move the microphone over, please? Thank you.
Okay, could you give me
the assignment? So you mentioned the two distinguished
Flowers and Wise.
Flowers and Wise. Schools named after them. And in my district, we don't have that honor. So I would love to get if you have available, my question, do you have available a list of like all the hometowns of all the Maryland Tuskegee Airmen? Because I think maybe we could shake out some interesting names from all our districts here, and we can maybe look at replicating that, because I really believe our youth need to know our heroes.
We can figure that out. The records themselves are very comprehensive for the pilots, but for some of the other specialties, maintenance and those other specialties, it would take us a minute, but we can figure that out. We have the names of the 15-plus airmen. Where they came from would not take long for us to figure that out.
So there are 15 in Maryland.
There were 15,000 original airmen.
15,000.
Original airmen. And I wouldn't even venture to guess how many exactly came from Maryland.
I think Mr. Pruden said that there were 20, right?
Madam Chair, I did some quick research. I would not pretend to have the knowledge that these gentlemen do, but I found 20 of the original Tuskegee Airmen came from Maryland. And it's interesting, 13 of them were from Baltimore.
Baltimore City or county?
It didn't say, it said
Okay.
Baltimore.
So here's what I'd like to suggest. I think Senator Ellis's suggestion is a good one. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Pruden, Mr. Burton, the rest of you. If you all can collaborate and then get the information to Senator Patterson, sponsor of the bill, to Senator Ellis, and to the rest of us, we'd love to have that information. I think it would be helpful legislatively as well as at home. I think it's something we all ought to be aware of. So, thank you. And with that, whoops, okay, Senator Carosa has a quick question.
Very brief. Mr. Killebrew, would you join us?
There you go.
This is the year. Your story, the way you've been telling it over the years of service and sacrifice is not only uplifting, but it's a unifier. And when we move forward, and this is the year, and go forward with the commemorative day honoring the Tuskegee Airmen, what do you want to see in the schools and on that day? What do you envision on that day?
I would like to see that the history of the Tuskegee Airmen is presented to all the schools, you know, from the middle schools on up to the high schools. I know a lot of students never heard of the Tuskegee Airmen when I was teaching in the high school there. And it was my goal to make sure that every student I had knew the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. And it was not done just during Black History Month. It was done during the year because they didn't do what their performance was not on one month. It was the entire war from the beginning to the end. And we need to have our students know the story, just like, other stories like the women that were in the Tuskegee Airmen, especially the nurses. There were 2 nurses that were 100 years old in Atlanta, and I think one of them just passed a few months ago. We have one that we know, Nancy Cologne, Nancy Lieutenant Cologne, is up in New York. She just had her 100th birthday. She was one of the nurses. There were 28 nurses that were a part of the Tuskegee Airmen. We need to recognize those individuals. They need to know that these women were part of the Tuskegee Airmen, as was the ground crews, the maintenance, the people that kept the airplanes flying. Because, nothing keeps a plane in the air other than the crew that takes care of it. So what I would like to do for the state of Maryland, we have parts of the history in the ROTC program. They give us the books. They provide the books for us, for all the ROTC units, and they have history of the Tuskegee Airmen. We'd like to have it in our regular history books in the state of Maryland and in nationwide, because, it would be good to have that history nationwide, because a lot of people don't know until they see it in print.
It's a powerful story. Thank you. And we will work with you on that.
Thank you. Thank you all again for your service, for your patience today, and for your presence in our community and in Annapolis. Thank you, Senator Patterson. That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 5.
Madam Chair, please indulge me for a moment. You heard me refer to Killebrew as Commissioner Killebrew.
Yes,
His
sir.
service extended into the Maryland Veterans Commission as a member of that august body.
Mr. Killebrew, that means you're kind of Secretary Owings' boss, right? Will you work really hard to keep that guy in line? I know that's a full-time job. Thank you for that service as well, Commissioner Killebrew.
Thank you for your support. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. Okay, the next bill. Give me 2 seconds. All right. Digging to the bottom of the pile, Senator Reedy, if we can ask our Tuskegee friends to just give us a moment and just leave quietly, please, if you would. Senator Reedy, you bring us interesting bills, and we've heard this one before, and it's fascinating. It's one of the few issues that I just found Yeah, unexpected. Senate Bill 534, Senator Reedy, general provisions, full year, daylight savings time. Welcome back. And if Matthew Rybel and Lisa Van Buskirk, I don't know if either of them are
They're
here.
not really on my panel, but I'm not sure if they're here, but they
Okay,
can
you
come up
guys can come up
afterwards.
later then.
Come up afterwards,
Okay,
that's fine.
all right, so
I mean,
Senator
I'm
Reedy.
happy for them to speak, but they're not on the panel.
No,
Okay.
you're good, you're good.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Madam Chair. It's a Madam Vice Chair, tough act to follow. I was ready to start writing up my co-sponsor amendment to submit right away while I was listening. Great to have those heroes here with us. But today I'm here to present Senate Bill 534, which is, bipartisan legislation. It would signal Maryland's desire to remain on daylight savings time year-round. I like to say we want to spring forward and stay there. To date, 42 states are entertaining or have passed legislation on the issue, and 2 states, on top of that, Arizona and Hawaii, only observe their respective standard times. Daylight savings time was initially implemented during World War I to save energy, but it maintained unexpected popularity among Americans after that war. It was reintroduced to happen year-round during World War II for some of the same energy-saving reasons. However, with the technological advances that we've realized today, there really isn't any significant energy savings associated with that time change process anymore. What has not changed, on the other hand, is the continued popularity of daylight time amongst Americans and their desire to make it permanent. The Federal Uniform Time Act of 1966, when I started on this issue a couple years ago, I dug into it pretty deep. The Federal Uniform Time Act of 1966 codified daylight savings time at the federal level. And it's been amended twice to extend that period, to extend the daylight savings periods. The most recent change was 2005, which took effect in 2007. These changes have demonstrated the flexibility to this time adjustment as far as the amount of time in the year that we practice daylight savings time, and they offer precedent as we consider changes at the state level. So currently, the Federal Uniform Time Act allows states to adopt standard time to their current time zone, but exclusively, but not daylight time. And as I said, there's really only 2 states that just stay in standard time out west. The purpose of passing this bill would be to add our name to the list of states that are asking the federal government to amend the act and allow us to adopt daylight time permanently. Given it's an opportunity for us to sort of join the battle on that. A state cannot do it unilaterally. Congress has to give you permission, and they usually want you to group into states. They don't obviously want Virginia on one time and Maryland on another time. So we all have heard the complaints from our constituents about, I assume, because I've heard from lots of constituents, about what happens when we switch the clocks. A lot of issues associated with sleep deprivation. It wreaks havoc on newborns, like my friend Senator Hayes in the Finance Committee will perhaps discover soon. There's also issues with pets and there's other issues that come up with the time savings. And so staying on one time obviously alleviates those negative effects. And in addition, there's been several studies, and we've cited some of them here, finding that traffic safety, crime reduction, and a stronger economic benefit are all things that we can count as benefits when we stay in daylight time, longer daylight during the hours that we're typically up and moving around. So this has gotten movement. The House of Delegates has actually passed it. It's sponsored by Delegate Crosby in the House, and it's coming on over here because they've passed it. I would just ask for your consideration and favorable support for this, and let's move this forward. It does not mean all of a sudden we're going to just be daylight time year-round. It simply tells Congress that we would like to make that change. So without any further ado, I will take any questions that you have.
Ask one quick question. The one thing you didn't reference that is a sticking point for a lot of folks is little kids standing at bus stops going to school really early. Could you address that, please?
Yes, and I have heard from some of the groups that have that concern, and there are groups that have been advocating for later start times anyway, and I actually agree with them. I think our young children, this is not this bill, but I think we ought to be thinking more and more about how we align the school day to sort of the regular work day. I think there's ways we could do that, particularly for the younger children. Right now, if we enacted this, there'd be about a month where that would be an issue. But it can be an issue now, too, depending on the timing of the school. I have common cause, I think, with those folks to say we should make sure that start times are late enough to where that wouldn't be an issue, or it might be an issue for maybe a couple of weeks. But that's the only comment I can really make on that. Unfortunately, there are issues with the time situation we have now. There'd be issues then relative to that. So
Sure.
that's really the only comment I can make. But I understand their concern.
Right, okay. So if the kids are waiting at the bus for at the bus stop for their electric buses to pull up, then that could work, right?
Well, if the buses are well lit by electricity, I suppose. Yeah,
There you
no,
go.
no,
All
yeah.
right. So Senator Reedy, thank you for that. If we can bring up Matthew Reibel and Lisa Van Buskirk, and I think Ms.
Thank
Van.
you for letting me maneuver in to try to make
Absolutely.
it.
I'm sorry for your loss, and
Thank you.
yeah, we'll see you later, tomorrow. Ms. Van Buskirk, I think I helped launch your comments here, since I just am noticing
ma'am.
that you're from Start School Later.
Yes, ma'am.
So, go ahead, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. I'm Lisa Van Buskirk.
Sorry, Ms. Van Buskirk, that's totally my error.
Oh, he should go first, 'cause he
Mr. Reibel
supports.
is in favor of the bill.
Gotcha.
Why don't you just take a seat back in the front row there, and then I'll switch you. You're an unfavorable. I apologize.
So favorables should always go first?
Yes. So we would love to hear from you as to why you think this is a good bill that we should support.
Yeah, I testify in favor of the bill.
Yeah.
To keep Maryland on daylight saving time year-round. As Senator Ratty, or what's it called, Reedy?
Uh-huh.
Reedy has pointed out, there are several problems with changing back and forth. The springtime change causes heart attacks every year, and there have been numerous studies, including a 25% increase found by a 2015 University of Michigan study. And the spring change also causes traffic accidents. A 2016 study from Austin Smith showed a 6% rise in traffic accidents for the entire week following the spring change. It results in 30 deaths and $275 million in social costs per year. And Americans sleep on average 40 minutes less on the Sunday of the DST change than on other Sundays. No sizable effects during the fall change have been detected. And there's also more reduction in accidents because there is more congestion and pedestrians out during the evening rush than during the morning rush hour. So the evening light can prevent more car accidents.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Reibel. The comments that you made are things I've also heard about, so thank you. That's very helpful. Are there questions for Mr. Reibel? Seeing none, we're really glad you came down to testify. Thank you.
Yes.
And now we're going to shift to Lisa Van Buskirk. Mr. Reibel, you can go back to the front row if you like. Ms. Van Buskirk, Start School Later in opposition to the bill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Lisa Van Buskirk, Chapter Leader of Start School Later Maryland, Anne Arundel County Chapters, in opposition to SB 534. And what is the difference between permanent daylight savings times versus the status quo or permanent standard time? It's the difference between sunrise on the opening day of Maryland General Assembly being at 8:24 a.m. versus 7:24. If you came to Annapolis at 7:30 on the opening day under permanent daylight savings time, wrong one. This one. This is what the State House would look like. If you came to Annapolis at 7:30 this year under standard time, this is what your view was of the State House. Quite a difference an hour makes. On Monday, March 14th, when over the weekend sunrise shifts to 7:20 and we return to daylight savings times, will you feel jet lagged and groggy in the morning when you come to work? How about a whole winter of that? A delayed sunrise would put more Marylanders of all ages commuting to work and school in morning darkness in unnecessary, unsafe, and unhealthy condition. This would be even more egregious for the adolescent students who are already burdened by too early school bell times and contrary to previous legislation urging school systems to start later. I urge you to look at the last page of my written testimony, which shows a chart of how many more K-12 children would start school before winter sunrise, let alone be picked up by school buses in the dark with sunrise as late as 8:39. Which of your district schools would start before sunrise? Over the next 2 years, Anne Arundel and Howard County school systems plan to move their bell times to match the recommendations of experts. Approving this legislation would negate their efforts 2 decades in the making. As a reminder, the National PTA is opposed to daylight savings time during the winter months because of the safety factor, and the Baltimore Sun's editorial board opposed the legislation in 2020. So I request a vote for an unfavorable report on SB 534. You could also amend it to include a mandate for minimum safe and healthy and age-appropriate start times as recommended by a 2017 Massachusetts study, or amend it to permanent standard time. If your issue is with the switch back and forth, then permanent standard time would be the better solution. Thank you.
Ms. Van Buskirk, thank you for your presence. I see no questions, so thank you for coming to Annapolis. Senator Reedy, thank you. That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 534. Next up is Senator Rosapep, Senate Bill 470. Senator, thank you so much for your patience and your indulgence in the change in order. We're glad you hung around. We miss you in EHE.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So Senator Rosapep is going to be presenting Senate Bill 470, General Provisions, Commemorative Days, Dashane Day. And is Supriya Jamir? Oh, the one in the gorgeous dress. Welcome. If you'd like to come up and join the good senator.
Yeah, of course. Oh, thank you.
All right. Welcome. You may begin.
Okay,
Senator.
thank you very, very much. You've heard this bill before. It is to set a commemorative day for Dashane, which is a Nepali festival for October 5th. It celebrates the victory of good over evil, and we could use celebrations of the victory of good over evil now more than ever. With that, I urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Jamir. Or I hope I'm saying that close.
It's Gimire.
Gamire.
Yes.
Lovely. Welcome.
Ready whenever?
You may
Okay.
begin.
Good afternoon, members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. My name is Supriya Gimire. I'm a 17-year-old college freshman currently attending Mount St. Mary's University, and I'm on my second semester. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Non-Resident Nepali Association, and I'm here today to present my testimony regarding Senate Bill 0470. With the agenda to promote South Asian culture and officially declare October 5th as Dasai Day. Dasai is a holiday commonly celebrated among the Nepali community. The main idea of Dasai is to celebrate the victory of good over evil. Being the first state to acknowledge Dasai would be a huge leap towards equality. This not only would benefit the Nepali community, allowing them to celebrate their holidays freely, but it would also allow Maryland to be seen as a state who cares about the voice of their minority groups. You know, often I'm asked, hey, where are you from? And to this I reply, Nepal. It's a small country in South Asia. It really baffles me to see the lack of knowledge our society possesses about my country. The diversity in Maryland is truly astonishing, seeing the beauty of every culture come together in order to create a community. We as America need to strive to be a country that respects all holidays and accepts the importance of cultures everywhere. So, if we don't start now, then when? And if not here, then where? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gamire. I see no questions for the witness or for Senator Rosapep. We appreciate, okay, I'm wrong. Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Roosevelt, for this bill. And young lady, did you say you were 17?
Yes, I am.
In
Wow.
her second semester in college.
Second semester in college?
I graduated early, yeah.
Wow.
At Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah, wonderful presentation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And a little backup. Is it Dashane Day? Is that
It's Dasai.
Dasai
Yeah,
Day?
so it's like
So
kinda
what
hard.
does it commemorate as far, what is that day?
Like to represent as far as?
No, what is it in Nepalese community? I mean, that word,
Like Dasai, honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. It's more of like what I know as far as like Dasai being celebrated. It's mainly known for the celebration of good over evil. So it's not, I don't really think it's more so like the name. I think it's more so just like I'm not really sure, to be honest.
okay. Yeah, well, you can reach out to me.
Yeah, of
and,
course.
yeah,
I mean, if I do
let me know.
research on it and,
So,
you
Ms.
know.
Gamire, I think this is the second bill we've had today that Senator Ellis has given a witness a homework assignment. I think this is a new thing now for him.
Well, I'm really
So,
interested in,
yeah.
it's really in the
Appreciate
culture
that.
and, you know, and your ideas. So I'd love more, and so I could find on my own, but, you know, it's always good to have other folks do
Yeah,
your
no,
homework
Thank
for
you,
you.
Senator
Thank
Ellis.
you.
Madam Chair,
Thank
if I
you,
could add,
Supriya. Yes.
there is some, in the bill itself, there's some description of the background.
Okay.
So take a look at that as well.
Thank you, Senator Rosapap. That completes the hearing.
Thank you very
on-
much.
Thank you,
Madam
and thank you
Chair?
again for waiting. Yes,
You know,
Mr. Chairman.
we're fighting good versus evil every day here in Annapolis, and I'm not sure if every day is DeShane Day or not. I don't know.
It should be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
The hearing is completed. And next up, we are going to, let's see, I saw Senator Jackson here. Let's go to Senate Bill 100. Were you pointing to someone else? Yeah, I saw Senator Jackson. Yep, so, Senator Jackson, General Provisions, Commemorative Days, Overdose Awareness. Along with Senator Jackson, we have Sandra Mattingly. Is she here? There we go. And that will be it. Senator Jackson, welcome to Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. For the record, Senator Michael Jackson, District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 100. Senate Bill 100 is a very straightforward bill that simply requires the governor to annually proclaim August 31st as Overdose Awareness Day. And with the amendment in your packet, it would also require the governor to lower the state flags to half-staff. Each year, Maryland loses thousands of residents to the growing epidemic of drug overdoses and drug-related death. According to the report on opioid and intoxication for fatality data from the Maryland Department of Health, Maryland recorded 2,025 deaths between January and September of 2020, representing 12% from the same time period, 12% increase from the same time period in 2019. The Maryland Department of Health also reports that total drug and alcohol intoxication deaths are steadily climbing. Total drug and alcohol intoxication deaths data indicates that Maryland lost 18,698 lives from 2017 to 2020. During that time frame, 13,479 lives were lost from 2015 to 2020. That 13,479 number accounts for some 75% of the 14-year total accounted for in the data from the Maryland Department of Health. COVID-19 pandemic has played a significant role as well. In the first 6 months of 2021, there were 1,358 unintentional intoxication deaths in Maryland. The same time frame in 2020, there were 1,351 deaths. We saw 2,700 overdose deaths in the year 2020, and will end with a number very similar, if not higher, once the numbers are officially released from 2021. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you they will be higher, unfortunately. As someone who spent the majority of my professional career in law enforcement, I've seen firsthand the impact of drug addiction and what it can do to individuals, their loved ones, and their communities. Reducing the stigma attached to seeking treatment for addiction would help us save countless lives. I'm hopeful that declaring August 31st as Overdose Awareness Day will be a means to reduce said stigma and to quell the suffering of those who are addicted and those who love them. Many other states are undertaking similar legislative efforts to raise awareness. There's roughly 12 states that are in the process. This bill in particular is modeled after a recently passed bill in the state of New Jersey. So with that, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd be happy, I'm asking for a favorable report, and I'm very happy to introduce my seatmate up here today, who has a compelling story and who has worked tirelessly in this realm, Ms. Mattingly.
Then I am guessing that 13,479, I'm guessing one of them is someone that you loved. Please share your testimony.
Yes, it is. Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Mattingly, and I am here today to represent the thousands of Maryland families and individuals who have been impacted by addiction and overdose. Whether they struggle with an addiction, live with a loved one struggling, or have lost a loved one to a drug-induced death, their lives matter. My son, Chase Mattingly, was only 21 years old 4 years ago, and he made a horrible mistake, a misled choice to use a drug that caused his death. He was not in addiction. He was healthy, happy, and had a bright future. He died from fentanyl intoxication. He didn't intend to die, and at that time, I, the parent, had no idea what fentanyl was. His life mattered too. International Overdose Awareness Day is a global event held on August 31st each year and aims to raise awareness of drug overdose, reduce the stigma of substance use, and acknowledge the grief of families and friends who have lost loved ones. The tragedy of addiction, overdose, and overdose death is unacceptable. Overdose does not discriminate, and it is preventable. The stigma, the shame, and the denial of this epidemic continues to reach epic proportions as we see many more of our young people dying unintentionally due to substance misuse and addiction. This is a mental health crisis. We must act. To help reduce this stigma, I ask each and every one of you to think about the value of your life and that of your loved ones. We need to step up and require our governor to enact legislation to annually recognize our overdose crisis and lower all flags in memory of our fallen. Lowering our flags on this day would send a much-needed public statement and certainly a strong message to our citizens that everyone affected by this crisis is valued. Our governor has the authority under an executive order entitled Protocol for the Maryland State Flag, Section 503, Use During Period of Mourning, to lower our state flag. A state governor also has the authority to order our national flag to fly half-staff in honor of any other national day of remembrance if they so choose. Let's join the state of Virginia, who passed House Joint Resolution 562 last year and will annually fly all flags on August 31st to show their citizens they are remembered and valued. I urge you to vote yes to Maryland Senate Bill 100 to annually commemorate Overdose Awareness Day and fly our flags half-staff. This would help reduce the stigma and save lives. The governor's office continues to state, and I quote, "We are committed to using every tool at our disposal to support individuals battling addiction, their families, and communities for a brighter future." What better way to make good on this commitment and show our citizens that their lives really do matter? Together, let's get Senate Bill 100 on the governor's desk. Don't wait till it's too late. This effort costs nothing, and it could help change everything. Thank you.
To Ms. Mattingly, and I'm so sorry for your loss of
Thank you.
Chase, your beloved
Thank you.
Chase. If I could possibly ask DePaul Nibber and Ann Seacott, if you all want to come forward, you all can scooch over, or Ms. Mattingly, if you could just shift to the front row, maybe, and make some space. We're still trying to sort of socially distance-ish. So you all can go in either order. Welcome to EHE.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is DePaul Nibber, representing the Maryland Association of Counties in strong support for Senate Bill 100. Our counties operate at the forefront of the opioid crisis. They engage in constant outreach to promote treatment, to reduce stigma. Commemorative days like Overdose Awareness Day and Drug Take-Back Day may seem small, but they serve a very important role. They recognize the very real toll of opioids in terms of lives lost and the impact that has on our communities. They also galvanize support for sometimes controversial but very much needed measures like naloxone training and syringe exchange programs. And for these reasons, we urge your support and request a favorable report. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Nibber. Ms. Seacott, welcome to EHE. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good evening. Ann Seacott here on behalf of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, the Maryland chapter, in strong support of Senate Bill 100. The only thing I'll add to this, because I think things were said very eloquently, especially by Ms. Mattingly, is this is important to family members. I have been at some of the events around International Awareness Day on August 31st. It is a time when families come together to grieve and celebrate together over what is unfortunately way too common a bond. These kinds of things matter, awareness days. Yes, the stigma, the joining of forces, and also absolutely about the advocacy that it leads to. And that's part of why you've seen a lot of family members over the years be here testifying on these issues. So it is an important issue. It's a small thing we could do that has a very meaningful impact to families. So we ask for your favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Seacott. Looks like the chair has a question. Senator Carosa, followed by the chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'll be very brief. We talked about the International Overdose Awareness Day and the comments about that day and communities coming together. And Mr. Nibber, your comments about at the county level, in my district at Shorebird Stadium, we actually had 3 of our county health officers organize and brought everybody together. So there is value in that. My question, though, is for Senator Jackson. You mentioned in your testimony talking about the need for something like this, and you referred to that the numbers would only go up. Were you specifically referring to the fact that during the pandemic, we've seen an uptick, an increase in our overdose numbers?
Thank you, Senator Carosa. Absolutely. Those numbers haven't been released yet. And I can tell you our 24 honored health officers by the Baltimore Sun, they could probably tell each and every one of us that some of our worst fears became realized because folks were shut in. And, you know, many of the challenges that we've had with folks who are shut in, having access to prescribed medications and others. And, you know, seclusion is having an effect on folks as well. So, yeah. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carosa, and the chair is good. So that completes the hearing on Senate Bill 100. Thank you all for your testimony. Thank you, Senator Jackson.
And Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, if I might, Ms. Mattingly had the great experience of being in Annapolis for the first time today and sitting in the gallery and, you know, during the climate change day.
You had no idea what you were getting yourself into, huh, Ms. Mattingly?
I would be.
But
I don't know how, Senator Pinsky, I don't know how you sleep at night.
Really well, yeah.
Well, and I'd also like to introduce our intern, second-year student at Towson University, Calvert County resident, Ms. Samantha Force.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for being
Thank you all very
intern.
much.
Such a good guy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Take care. Get home safely. That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 100. We've got a few more. Senator Hershey, if you brought samples, you could be next. If not, I'm totally taking Senator Hedelman next. Dang. Come on up, Senator Hershey. Oh, okay. She took me seriously. Here we go. No, come on up. Senator Hedelman, come on up. Okay. Senator Hedelman has Senate Bill 744, Housing and Community Development, Affordable Housing, Listing and Disposal of Excess Real Property. Great to have you here. And Tom Cole with YIMBY, Maryland, and Miranda Willems, Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition, and Claudia Wilson Randall, who may or may not be in the room. Okay. All right. Senator Hedelman, great to have you back in EHE. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Shelley Hedelman from District 11 in Baltimore County, and I am here today to present what I hope you will find to be a pretty creative and interesting bill. I'm sorry, Claudia. Okay, I didn't see you. Okay, good to see you. Great. The goal of this bill is to increase the amount of affordable housing in Maryland. You may know that a report was issued by the Department of Housing and Urban Development I think it was last year, that identified that Maryland lacks approximately 85,000 rental units for its lowest income households. This study projects also, on top of that, between 2020 and 2030, Maryland will add and have a need for an estimated over 97,000 extremely and very low-income households. These projections were made immediately before COVID, which has put additional families into poverty and housing insecurity. And without accelerating the rate of development of affordable housing, the current shortage will continue to be worse. And we need lots of different tools to address this issue. There are lots of different pieces that make the development of affordable housing particularly challenging. The access to capital, the rising costs of labor and materials, and a finite open amount of open land on which to build. And this bill is primarily focused on expanding opportunities for the acquisition of land, which, as we all know, is a big chunk and a big expense of the development of affordable housing. This bill seeks to identify state-owned land, and this is one of the policy solutions that was outlined in the DHCD report. We all periodically get notices from the Department of Planning that through the clearinghouse process. The Department of Planning lists over 14 pieces of real property, and only a very limited number each year are identified as excess by agency heads. And only a subset of those would theoretically be identified under this bill as suitable for affordable housing. When a property is identified as suitable by providing the land for free at a discount, we can reduce the overall cost of development and thereby help to keep future rents and mortgage payments lower. There are a few other examples of other states that do this. The bill's definition of affordable housing precludes any property where development would conflict with environmental or historical preservation interests. The bill also doesn't divert any funds as part of this process, and it can actually raise funds generated through the sale of properties to developers or nonprofits for affordable housing development. The bill requires state units of government to compile a list each year of properties it owns and has either no current or future use for, and that would be suitable for the development of affordable housing. And as amended, the bill's definition of affordable housing is consistent with the definition used under the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. If the property is suitable, the bill as amended requires the unit of state government to work with the Department of Planning and DHCD to develop a proposal either to donate or sell the property to a nonprofit or a for-profit developer that intends to develop the property for affordable housing. And if no nonprofit or for-profit buyer is identified, then the property would be sold at auction and funds generated through this process would be deposited in the Rental Housing Fund, which is the state fund for financing affordable and low-income housing projects. The bill also outlines elements used to assess a property's suitability for affordable housing. A property will be added to the list of suitable properties if it is located in an area designated as a priority funding area, opportunity zones. If it does not belong in a category, as I said, listed under a protected, environmentally precarious or historical preservation area, if it's adequately sized for any type of residential use, if it has access to public utilities, and it has access to feasible ingress and egress points. We think this bill is a creative way of examining our already existing state resources that might be, and to identify those that might be appropriate and developable for affordable housing, and making them available to nonprofit and for-profit developers to help meet the desperate need Maryland has for affordable housing. So without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to my panel. I think we have Mr. Cole listed first, and happy to answer any questions when the time is appropriate.
Thank you, Senator Hedelman. And Mr. Cole, YIMBY, yes, in my backyard.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
I
Welcome.
heard the indication that all of these terms should be spelled out. So YIMBY Maryland is a new organization formed in November. We already have over 400 members, and hopefully by the next time you see me, we'll have over thousands of members. But we're made in response to the housing crisis described by Senator Hettleman. We've submitted written testimony which outlines many of the statistics related to it, some of which Senator Hettleman has already cited. But one thing I wanted to note is that we say housing is a human right, but in the United States of America, housing is not an entitlement. And because of that, less than 1 in 4 low-income families that would otherwise be eligible for housing assistance receive it. And the big problem, what it was causing all of this, is housing supply. We don't have enough housing for our very low-income families. These are families making 20% or below of the area median income. These are people that not too long ago and continuing to today we refer to as our essential workers. They are also providing critical public services to our communities, and they can't afford to live in our communities. So what this bill does is that it addresses the issue of supply, and it addresses also the issue of cost, because one of the greatest drivers of the cost of housing is land cost. I'm on the board for the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership, which is Maryland's primary housing voucher entity, and our families want to live in high opportunity areas. Our families want to live in areas where there are well-funded schools and high quality of life. But the issue is that our families can't afford to live there, and our vouchers don't go as far as they might in other communities. But by taking the land cost out and allowing housing developers to build on these spaces, we allow for innovation. One of the entities I've cited in our testimony is Vessel. Now, there are many other innovators in this space, but Vessel is one I'm aware of. And what they do is they work with localities and states to find state-owned property that they can get at land lease or buy for $1. And they take that savings and they build prefabricated multifamily housing. They then take that savings and pass it on to the families that live in those buildings and offer opportunities for equity. Because when we talk about home ownership in the affordable housing space, what we're really saying is how can we create wealth for these families? And so this is just one example of the innovation that would be available to affordable housing developers if we can take some of the costs off of their plate. I also referenced the low-income housing tax program, tax credit program. Senator Hettleman has referenced that as well. All of these entities need to worry about the bottom line, because if it doesn't pencil out, it's not going to be built. And because of that, if you pay attention to low-income housing tax credit buildings that are being built in your districts, they are small. It is because of this bottom line cost as it relates to land. So this is a great innovative program. It is such an important step because if Maryland is going to take on the housing crisis, Maryland is going to need to put its resources to bear to take it on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your leadership. It's really important. So very cool to have a new organization on this. Ms. Willems, followed by Ms. Randall.
Great. Good afternoon, Chairman Penske, Vice Chairman Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Miranda Darden Willems, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition. We are an association for Maryland's affordable housing developers, and I'm here today on behalf of our 185 member organizations to support Senate Bill 744. I know you all agree that Maryland has a shortage of affordable housing, and Senator Hettleman has already discussed it a little bit, so I'm not going to spend too much time discussing the need for more affordable housing in Maryland. There are very few parcels of undeveloped land left for sale that are zoned and suitable for multifamily housing. So affordable housing developers have to get very creative to find properties they can build on. For example, the former Wiley H. Bates High School just down the street in Annapolis was redeveloped into a multi-use facility and includes 71 units of senior housing. In Montgomery County, a developer built 149 affordable apartments above the Silver Spring Library. And in Arlington, Virginia, a developer worked with a church to build affordable housing on top of their church building. These are all examples of local governments and mission-driven organizations working creatively to build more affordable housing. If the state could provide more land, that would open up many more opportunities for the development of housing for our workforce, because the hardest part of developing affordable housing is getting site control. Affordable housing developers are competing with market rate developers and investors who can move quickly. They can pay all cash, often paying premium prices to acquire vacant land for development. Affordable housing developers usually have to wait for an allocation of low-income housing tax credits before they can close. And many private landowners aren't willing to wait that long. That could take a year or two before they get those tax credits. So our developers are also experiencing unprecedented increases in development cost, especially construction cost, due to supply chain disruptions, inflation, rising interest rates, as well as decreased
you.
pricing for tax credits. Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Willems. And let's wrap it up with Claudia Wilson-Randall. Ms. Randall.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Wilson-Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland. And the Community Development Network of Maryland, our mission is to promote, strengthen, and advocate for the community development sector throughout Maryland's urban, suburban, and rural communities. CDN envisions a state where all communities are thriving and where people of all incomes have abundant opportunities for themselves and for their families. I just want to say that Senate Bill 744 is really an important piece, and my colleagues have already talked about the need for more affordable housing throughout the state. One of the points that I want to raise, and I put this in my written testimony that you have, is just the Maryland Housing Needs Assessment and the need for, that was completed in 2021 by the National Center for Smart Growth and Enterprise Community Partners. And it just, it identifies the need for affordable housing statewide by region. And I think that it's really critical that we also tie the need for affordable housing with an equitable recovery for the state of Maryland from the COVID-19 pandemic. Without affordable housing, we will not have a recovery. And we also will not have sustainable economic development. And I would also tie the need for affordable housing with Kerwin, which the Maryland General Assembly spent many years now working on. But the connection between education funding and need for affordable housing is quite close. And if we don't address the communities around schools, we're not going to be able to change what happens inside schools. And we really need to give that some attention. And I just think it's really critical that we give that,
Thank you. Thank
keep
you,
our
Ms.
eye on
Randall.
that going forward.
Thank you.
So with that, I just ask for your favorable report of Senate Bill 744. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. Senator Hester?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to see you all. It's good to see Mr. Cole in particular from my district. Thank you for being here. My question is, I've actually been working with the Secretary of Planning and the Secretary of Commerce, looking at all of our state's historic complexes. And we published a report in 2020 called Advancing the Preservation and Reuse of Maryland's Historic Complexes. One of the recommendations of that group was that the state, through the clearinghouse process, look at long-term leases. And so as a way for the state to, potentially, as a way for the state to look at its, retain some of the value of the land that it has. And so my question is, I support the intent of the bill. Instead of selling the land, what would be the impact on the affordable housing developers if there were a long-term lease provided?
Go ahead.
Well, I represent a number of affordable housing developers, and I will say that they are a creative bunch. However, they are often limited by the constraints of where their funding sources come from. And I think another colleague on the panel will be able to address that in greater detail, but the funding sources will often dictate whether or not a lease is available, because if you are an investing institution, you need to get to closing, and that closing process on a lease might be a little bit more difficult than an outright ownership. But
Yeah, and I don't know the particulars of the tax credit rules in terms of the IRS requirements, but in order to take out loans and borrow, you have to be able to put a lien on the property, and there has to be an ownership interest. So I'm not sure, but it's possible that that structure could work. We could certainly look into it.
I'd be delighted to follow up offline. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing, and and we'll definitely get back to you, but I do think what Tom said is accurate in terms of if you're using low-income housing tax credit to finance it, I'm guessing that would preclude just leasing it, not outright purchasing it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Senator Hedelman, you mentioned, I think, 14,000 real property items, but that's the universe, I think.
Correct.
Do we have any rough idea how many might actually be usable for low-income or low-interest housing?
So I think we don't know, but when we were researching this, we anticipated it would actually be very few every year. So this would be something that DHCD would have to do once they got the list from the Department of Planning. And I also want to be clear that, and this hasn't come up, but I imagine it will, is that all the local zoning issues are still in place. We are not changing anything with regard to that. So that also is the overlay, which may indeed, limit certain things. But in terms of the overall number, I think we're talking, I don't know that there's any way exactly to put a number on it, but you have to meet all of these other qualifications too, not historic, not environmentally sensitive, it has to be an appropriate area, and that we need DHCD's expertise to help us identify that.
The 14,000, are they structures, or could they be undeveloped property?
I think they are undeveloped, can be undeveloped. It's both.
Okay. And this bill seeks to develop housing in both categories? In other words, is it to rehab existing houses that have been just walked away from? Or are you also trying to get investors to do property where there are no structures?
All of the above.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
So I had a personal conversation with Senator Hedelman, but I'm just going to share it. And I think my colleagues know that I compete in Scrabble at the national level. And there was a great hotel in Wilmington, Delaware, that I played very many tournaments. It was just a great, average, but really convenient hotel. And as I was getting psyched to go to my next Scrabble tournament, I learned that it had been sold by the chain into affordable housing, and I thought that was inspiring. So I wonder, since we're not just supposed to make comments, would that be the sort of project that you think would fit into this, and would that be an appropriate use of that sort of property?
If it were owned by the state and it was surplus and the local government was looking at doing affordable housing there, absolutely.
This was in another state, but I believe that sort of transfer might have been effected. So I thought it was kind of great, but I was a little sad, I have to say. Okay, seeing no other question that competes. Senator Carosa, of course. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Your question actually prompted mine, and it will be brief. Ms. Randall, you've been to Princess Anne in my district. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask you, based on Madam Vice Chair's question, and you're actually being on site in my district, how you envision this legislation could be impactful or beneficial to that part of the shore.
I think without knowing the actual inventory, without having the input of planning, I don't know, but I think there are older surplus properties that could be looked at and could be explored in terms of Princess Anne. And I think that there are even some of the old inns and things like that that really haven't gotten, really old buildings that haven't gotten the attention that they deserve could, possibly be looked at for affordable housing.
Well, I appreciate you coming to my district. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Hedelman, for this bill, and
Thank
thank
you.
you all for your advocacy on such an important human rights issue.
Thank you so much.
That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 744. And now, Senator Hershey, have you gotten your samples? Next up is our friend Senator Hershey with Senate Bill 343, State Designations, State Spirit, Maryland Rye.
It is almost 5 o'clock somewhere. so-
It's past 5 o'clock
I
here.
should have brought
Kevin
samples.
Addicks from the Maryland Distillers Guild, Rachel Fontana, Sagamore Spirit, and I have a bottle of that. Monica Pierce, 10th Ward Distilling Company are your witnesses. Senator Hershey, welcome back. Oh, and Marcus Stevens.
Senator in Margaritaville, it's 5 o'clock.
There we go. All
That's
right.
where we
Senator Hershey, welcome back to EHE.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, Senator Steve Hershey. I'm here to present Senate Bill 343, which designates Maryland Rye, or Maryland Rye Whiskey, as the state spirit. Maryland is finally rekindling its long history of rye production, with 15 distillers in the state using rye grain to produce rye whiskey. Much like Kentucky is known for bourbon, Maryland is known as the producer of rye whiskey throughout the world. Major investments in rye farming and rye production have created a rye whiskey trail, and the designation as rye as the state spirit in Maryland would help us generate an economic impact to match the almost $9 billion brought in by the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. I have Kevin Addicks with me from the Maryland Distillers Guide, along with Monica Pierce from the 10th Ward Distilling. We also were going to have Rachel Fontana and Marcus Stevens from Sagamore Spirits, but given the time, they had to leave, but they sent their regards and are certainly in favor of this legislation. So I ask the committee for your favorable report.
Senator Hershey, Mr. Addicks.
I'm actually going to start first.
Oh, okay, you're down as lead witness. Okay, please.
Do you want to start?
No, I'll be very quick.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Pierce.
My name is Monica Pierce. I'm the founder and owner of 10th Ward Distilling Company, based out of Frederick, Maryland. I also represent the Maryland Distillers Guild as well as the vice president of the guild. Both entities, as you can tell, are in support of this bill. 10th Ward produces a variety of spirits and canned cocktails. Primarily, one of those spirits is a rye whiskey. We did that because of the heritage of rye in our state, because of the story we can tell with it, to revitalize something that is a part of our culture and has been. And it's just a very important story to tell. I recently returned from a conference in Kentucky and got a chance to visit the Bourbon Trail, and I was in awe with the amount of support that the state gives to the Bourbon Trail, to the distilleries there. As soon as you get off the airplane, you see the marketing, the signage, the artwork, street signs, tourism that is generated from the Bourbon Trail, and it's pretty neat to see. We make a bourbon as well, and it's funny to witness how many customers will actually try to correct us and tell us only bourbon can be made in Kentucky. And that's not the case unless it's designated a Kentucky bourbon, but it would really be fascinating if we could see that happen with Maryland rye whiskey. 10th Ward would be more likely to be able to compete on the shelf with other out-of-state distilleries that make what they call a Maryland-style rye. And it would also allow us to tell the story better, to generate more sales, of course, grow more rye in the state, purchase more rye, generate more tax revenue for the state as well. I'm a local constituent here. My business has contributed to the state by creating more jobs, contributing to the economy, tourism, et cetera. So I just ask that you hear our voice today and consider voting in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pierce. Appreciate it. Now, Mr. Addicks.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Very much appreciate you hearing this bill, and thank you to the senator for sponsoring it. I won't repeat what Monica said. It's an incredibly important industry to the state. If you take the stairs next time from the first floor, look to your left and see that there are 2 whole displays dedicated to Maryland rye whiskey, the history of Maryland rye and the importance. When settlers first arrived, they planted things they knew they could make things out of. They planted rye because they knew how to make whiskey. Whiskey was the top beverage known to be produced in Maryland. Eventually, after some religious battles, bourbon moved to Kentucky. Bourbon actually started in southern Maryland, St. Mary's County, was where Basil Hayden and some others actually began distilling. That led to the rye industry really taking over, and what we've seen in the last 7 years since the Distillers Guild was formed and since the industry began to rekindle after 75 years of relative dormancy, we've gone from one distiller making rye to now over 40 distillers in the state, 15 of them using Maryland grains to make rye, and the rest really trying to come on board. So the industry has grown significantly in the last 10 years. It's a $180 million industry right now compared to what you heard in Kentucky, who has a designation as the state spirit. We're asking you to help us reclaim Maryland's rye whiskey heritage. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Addix. We have a question from Senator Hester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you all. Mr. Dr. Addix, I was just curious if you could make a comparison with like the Maryland Beer or Winery Trail and how that has contributed to economic growth.
So what we've seen in the beer industry and the wine industry, both which are larger industries in the state than the spirits industry, we've seen significant economic impact being brought back into the state from those industries. Beer, for example, is up to a $640 million a year economic impact, and that's with only 130 breweries, most of them very small in the state. But there's so much tourism that occurs because of that. With whiskey and distillers, we're just not a critical mass yet. We have a lot that are coming online, but we really do need a boost, and it's also a lot more competitive given what happens in other states, and with Kentucky being the state right now. There's Tennessee too, but.
Okay. Thank you Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you for this bill, Senator Hershey. Appreciate it. So when everyone talk about the trail, the Maryland Rye Whiskey Trail, so what are the stops on this trail? Trail. It's late.
Sure, there are actually whiskey distillers in many of your districts as I look around the room. Senator Carosa has one, you have one in your district, you have one in your district, you have one. So Senator Simonaire, we need to work on your district. Senator Riley, you have one coming. Senator Patterson, you have one in development too. So you have folks who are growing products on their farms and trying to figure out what they can make out of it. And rye whiskey is one of the top crops grown in the state. It's one of the traditional grains. So if we can value add that, then so much more revenue comes back to the state.
Yeah, so when you say the trail, and you mentioned the distilleries, so you think about agritourism, will there be anything with the farms, tied into the farms as far as for the tourism portion of that?
Yes, we have a number of our distillers that are actually starting on the farms. So it's not just the growing of the grain and sending it to the distillery. We have a few that are starting on farms, one in Western Maryland, one in St. Mary's County as well, and I think we have one coming very soon in Senator Riley's district and Senator Carosa's district on farms.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Senator Hester, is your microphone? Okay, all right. Thank you for the education, thank you for the advocacy, and thank you for your patience. It's been a long day for all of us, and we know that you had to wait around. That completes the hearing for Senate Bill 343.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Senator Hershey.
Thank you very much.
All right, the last bill of the day, one of our own, Senator Riley, SJ1, Apraxia Awareness Day. And he promised us a 45-minute overview of the issue. Yes, Senator Riley.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Apraxia Day. About 6 years ago, I met a delightful couple during marriage prep by the name of Claire Williams and her husband Jason, and they've been friends for 5 years. Got married, and they had a beautiful child, a little girl, and as the child was growing, they noticed a speech issue. And apraxia is the inability for the brain to communicate to the mouth. There's no deformity in muscles or strength. It's just a disconnect. So the lovely couple, Claire Williams is actually a PhD education major out of Baylor. They belong to the American Speech Language Hearing Association, and they're going around the United States requesting a identification of Apraxia Awareness Day. The date that they have selected nationally is May 14th, and 7 or 8 states have already come on board. Again, with any other designation like this, we want to increase awareness and the understanding of this motor speech disorder that makes it hard to speak. You can imagine the frustration for a little child being unable to communicate like their peers may, or as the parents are expecting their child to have a normal development, and this is an impediment to that. Again, increase awareness and understanding. Bear with me just a second. It causes children to have significant difficult learning to speak and are among the most severe speech defects in children. We learn to speak almost effortlessly like most children, but with apraxia requires early, appropriate, and very intense speech therapy for many years. So this is not a short-term issue. The other issue that you can well imagine is that it has negative primary and secondary educational impacts, which diminish future independence and employment, while these folks are being challenged in their ability to become productive citizens if unresolved. So it's a request to designate a day, bring awareness. So one of the first things is for my peers to know that there is this disorder, apraxia, and to ask for a favorable vote on the Senate Joint Resolution number 1. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Riley. I see no questions. Thank you for that tutorial. I did not know what that was. Appreciate it. I see no questions. That completes the hearing on Senate Joint Resolution number 1. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's been quite a day. Thank you for your support. We're going to hold the voting of the 6 or 7 or 8 bills till tomorrow. I'm spent, and I know some of you are as well. We're coming in tomorrow at 11. The Senate President said an hour. I think it'll be a little longer, to tell you the truth. But if that goes till 12:30, for example, and we go at 1, I'm hoping no more than 2 hours. So we can get out of here daylight, people can get home and still have a reasonable time to recoup over the weekend. So with that, we may add 1 or 2 bills. You should have a list in your office if you haven't already gotten it, which are basically the leftover bills from yesterday. We may add 1 or 2 bills. One may be the bill we heard today, the Hedelman bill. There's another bill similar to it that we heard from Senator Zucker. So anyway, that may be on the list, and we'll get it to you early tomorrow morning. I don't want to have any surprises. So that's sort of where we are. So with that, get some dinner, see your loved ones. See you tomorrow.